Hi everyone, it's Stephanie Odom, your professor. It's January 29th and I just wanted to do another short video to respond to the discussion board posts that were responding to Parker, Horner, and Douglas. I'm going to be reading through your Berlin reading questions later this week and of course grading your papers. And then your discussion board posts and your reading questions on the second part of Berlin will be due next Wednesday since I was late in getting those to you. And then a response to your peers' posts about the second part of Berlin will be due on Friday, a week from tomorrow. And I hope to be back on schedule the week after that. Also, if you didn't see the announcement, I posted or I made a forum in the discussion board for you to leave anonymous feedback to me about how the class is going so that I can use that when I'm planning out the readings in the weeks to come and just to make any adjustments that I need to. Okay, so I saw some common themes in your responses to Parker, Horner, and Douglas on the discussion board, and a lot of them were about the disappearance of Latin from the university curriculum in the 18th and 19th centuries. And it did seem like that was represented as happening kind of abruptly in the readings. And there were, I don't know that it was actually that abrupt, and it depends on which universities you're looking at and which, continents and countries and just how exactly you look at it. But I did a little bit of research in a book I love, and if you're interested in this topic, and I'll say a little bit more about research topics in a second. I don't know if this is going to appear. Yeah. The Formation of College English by Tom Miller is an immensely, fabulously researched book about how the study of English got going in universities in Scotland, Ireland, and England, but I focus on Scotland since that's kind of where American writing programs came from. So, just briefly, among the reasons that Latin fell out of favor as the language of the academy and higher education in general, it had a lot to do with developments in the 18th century. For example, how the printing press was getting, really picking up steam, and there were more books available. Just paper became cheaper because they figured out how to print it on, make it out of wood instead of rags and cotton and animal hide and stuff. So the price of paper dropped. Just the reading public expanded. There were more people to read things. Printing presses made it easier and cheaper to deliver reading material, and English was the language of the British Empire, so it was going around the world. So lots of things having to do with print culture, as it's called in England in the 18th century, but also reasons having to do with religion and established religion, especially. You might remember that Puritans, Protestants and Puritans specifically, were big believers in popular literacy, being, translating the Bible from Latin into the language, the vernacular language of a country, like Martin Luther did for Germany, and I'm not going to remember the names, but British authors, English authors translate it into English. So that more people could read it, and they didn't have to have a priest interpret the Word of God for them. Also, when we're talking about Scotland in particular, the Scottish churches and the Scottish society really did value popular literacy, and the Presbyterian Church had a pretty democratic structure, not as hierarchical as the Church of England, the Anglican Church. So these values, democracy, popular literacy, access to knowledge, all played a part in how English became the language of instruction rather than Latin. And when we're talking about Scotland also, the Scots were the Scots. They weren't the English, but then they became part of England. I'm not going to remember the date, but it's the union between Scotland and England. So they wanted to gain power through the English channels of government, and also increase their wealth by trading with English people. And so one of the quotes from this Thomas Miller book that just encapsulates it really well is that, I can't find it, basically English was the prestige language according to the Scots. So English, and Europeans studied Latin because that had been the prestige language for centuries, but the Latins studied Greek because that was the prestige language for them. So we can still say that English is the prestige language in lots of different contexts, and definitely international, academic discourse. So that's why the Scots studied English, and they also became more interested in reading literature that would kind of acculturate them to British taste and values. So that's another reason why English developed in the way that it did, kind of at the expense of Latin. But anyway, Thomas Miller, in addition to writing The Formation of College English, wrote a really neat, pretty short little essay that's on his website at the University of Arizona. I posted a link to that on someone's discussion board post. It was Sippy Lawley. She had a post about English studies today becoming kind of like the classics, like less relevant, just kind of studying language for language's sake, not really keeping up with the times, basically. So I responded to that and included a post to Thomas Miller's essay about that, which you should read if you're interested in this question. Another topic that kept coming up was people comparing basically the writing styles of the three authors, which I thought was great that y'all went ahead and did that and had a lot of interesting things to say about, like, uses of metaphor. But also, there was kind of a consensus, I think, that Douglas and Parker sounded more subjective, polemical, had kind of more voice in their writing style, whereas Horner was more dry, objective, just trying to tell a history, and that's it. I hope that from the reading you've already done in Berlin, and definitely the reading you will be doing for next Wednesday, you'll see that Berlin would disagree that any perspective can be an objective one, and that any representation of a narrative or a history can be removed from any kind of ideology at all. So that's not to say that you should go back and read those with that in mind and read how Berlin would read, but it's just a contrast that I had on my mind since I was reading Berlin along with your blog posts, your discussion board posts. So look out for that perspective in Berlin. On the reading questions, hopefully it was clear which parts I thought you should really concentrate on and which parts I thought you could skip. I know it's dense. I think that you're working together in your study groups to help make sense of all that and to break it down. So I really hope those are beneficial for you and that they're working. If there are any problems, let me know. What else did I want to respond to? Oh yeah, you have some great titles to your discussion board posts. I really enjoy reading them. It makes it easier to go back and remember who said what. I'm horrible at coming up with interesting titles, so I really respect that. So the last thing is that I notice a lot of people were saying things like, it's interesting that, or I wonder why, and these are the beginnings of research questions. So if you find yourself thinking that, especially if you were thinking about it enough to write it into your discussion board posts, make a note of that and save it as a potential research question for your upcoming projects. Because your next papers after your synthesis essay are going to be a footnote trail exercise, an annotated bibliography, and a bibliographic essay. Those can, and maybe should, to be most efficient, will be pursuing one research question and starting out kind of on a surface level and getting deeper, but also more broad in your research of relevant sources. So if you're already interested in something like, Brian had a really good question about why England didn't have or doesn't have a first-year composition class. And as far as I know, most places don't really. So you can definitely research that. I think that would be a very relevant question. So that's just an example, but keep track of those thoughts as you're having them. So that is it for right now. Sorry I got behind this week. That won't happen anymore. This week just hit me like a ton of bricks. So let me know if you were having any problems. If I make mistakes, let me know. Let me know how the class is going for you. I really want to know that. And have fun reading about Berlin. reading Berlin's thoughts on rhetorics, poetics, and cultures, not Berlin, Germany. Anyway, I will look forward to reading your papers and seeing your discussion board posts. Okay, until next time.